The opinions expressed on this program are solely those of its hosts, guests, or callers, and do not necessarily represent the opinions of WTBR-FM, its management, other producers, or sponsors.
Hi, everyone. You're listening to Backstory. Let's hear it on WTBR-FM Pittsfield with Roberta McCulloch-Dews of the Mayor's Office in the city of Pittsfield. Thanks for tuning in. Today we have with us Jesse Tobin McCauley, a creative extraordinaire whose roles include that of graphic designer, creative director, photographer, painter, and mural artist. Jesse is on the board of the Berkshire Art Association and is the creator of the Drive, Walk, Bike by City Art Show in Pittsfield. Jesse's latest project is the Welcome to Pittsfield mural at the Intermodal Center, and more of her vibrant work can be seen all around Pittsfield and throughout parts of Berkshire County and beyond the Commonwealth. So welcome, Jesse. Let's get started.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. We ran into each other at the drugstore.
We did.
And that reminded me, I said to myself, oh my goodness, I remember seeing just that beautiful mural at the Intermodal Center. And I think what a fit-in welcome for people who are just coming into Pittsfield.
Yeah, they definitely needed something, right? It was a pretty plain train station that's not used too often. So, getting a splash of color in there was essential.
Oh, and if you see Jesse is, I said she's wearing an original JTM creation, because if you know any of her work, those vibrant, bold colors, she is embodying that this morning with her attire. So it's very beautiful. But I always like to set the stage with some background information. So, Jesse, you grew up in Pittsfield. You were raised in Pittsfield?
Yes, I'm born and raised in Pittsfield, Massachusetts.
Now, does your family go all the way back? Are you one of those Pittsfielders that can trace your lineage?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, don't ask me about the past generations totally, but yes, my grandparents, great-parents, and great-grandparents, all here.
Wow.
Everyone pretty much on the west side. My dad's family all on Seymour Street.
Okay.
So yes, I was born here. I did go all through school here, graduated, and then left for college.
Wow. Okay, so which schools did you attend?
In Pittsfield? Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Okay. I went to West Side. I grew up on the West Side on Bradford, Anoda, Lakeway, kind of throughout. But I went to what is now called Conti. It was West Side at the time. Reed Middle School, Antaconic High School.
Wow. Wow. So you're a Pittsfielder
like a
through and through.
Yes, I am.
Wow. All right. And so you grew up, you're creative, and sometimes creatives are inspired by the people around them. And your family, I think, almost set the stage for you to be who you are, because your dad was a fine arts painter.
Yes.
Now, your mom, even though her day job was different, she was a social worker, right?
Yes, she was.
She had a hobby for interior decorating.
She was, obsessed with our home and making our home kind of like in these, there would be I would say little vignettes around our home, like setting kind of little, areas aside to create.
Interesting.
Like little installations, but it was just the home, dishes and plants and things.
Were her parents artists?
No. Nope. Not at all, but she definitely had a creative knack and loved interior design. But yes, she was a social worker for her whole career.
Wow. I'm wondering, too, it's like you sometimes see people who have passions like that, and you think to yourself, in another life, would they have chosen that hobby that brought them so much joy?
I think she would have.
Yeah.
She said that later in life, for sure. She also had she loved fashion. She loved interior design. She would tell me as a kid you just want to fit in with your friends and wear the same things. And she said, no, you have to go into a store, and the first thing that pops out, you have to buy that. And I thought, well, no, I'm not. I'm going to do that. I'm 11 or 12 or 13. I'm going to buy the same stuff as my friends. But now I do that.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a funny thing. Or now I think about it. I guess I don't always follow through.
Isn't it interesting, though, how our family inspires us? We run away from it when we're little and young, but then when we get to a certain age, those are the things that we actually cling to.
Yeah, I think if it's like burrowed in your brain,
for
something
sure,
that you heard through your childhood,
for sure.
Yes, definitely.
And your uncles were creatives as well, so like they are like sculptors and wood maker. Like, is that even a word, wood maker?
Yeah, my uncle Chris, who lives out in Los Angeles, he would make like people out of wood, like life-size people. Now he's making masks and kind of putting them around. He lives in Culver City.
That's awesome.
And my Uncle Jay is an abstract painter. He and I would say, have the most similar style of anyone in the family. And my Uncle Bill was he was a chemistry teacher at PHS, but he was a metal sculpture artist that he showed at the Mount and all around town. Yeah.
I think that's pretty fascinating to have this family, like so many were creatives. Now, again, I always have to ask, where did that come from, the influence for everyone to just be so creative?
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't know.
I think it's a great thing, because we see in families how some, like, some folks, their brain will work on one side, and definitely I feel like I'm the creative side of things, and my brother is like on that like science end of things too. So it's interesting.
Yeah, we kind of have the mix, because my uncle was a scientist plus an artist. My other uncle was a firefighter, but also is an artist. So everyone. My dad was the only one that went full out with just an artist career. And he was a teacher, an art teacher later in life.
Yeah, they were actually like manifesting STEAM. Now, STEAM is popular when everyone's talking about like science, tech, engineering, and the arts.
Right.
But and back in the day, people would separate them and think, oh, you're just doing STEM or the arts. But I think there is so much value to actually do both of them, because it helps the brain.
Yeah, definitely. Right? You're just well-rounded.
So I want to know, like, as a kid, what were your art projects like?
I wasn't that out there as a kid, I guess, with colors and stuff. I really enjoyed painting.
Yeah.
And doing kind of like collage work with color, like construction paper.
Yep, me too.
And creating little sculptures out of wire.
Yeah.
But, I really didn't get full on into art making probably later in my mid-20s maybe, but I always was creative as a kid.
Now, when your folks saw you doing your artwork, and maybe you were doing it in your room or at the kitchen table, would they walk by and say, oh, that's nice? Or would they say a little bit of that or a little bit of that, and maybe, or would they just leave you be?
No, it was more like a do whatever you'd like to do.
Yeah.
Really. Not much.
All right.
Well, no, my dad was a little bit more picky, but with his critiques, I guess. But it's more kind of like just create, just keep kind of creating.
So when did you know? So there's the side when it's a hobby and it's fun, and then you get to the side where you're like, I love this. This is my passion. When did you have that aha moment?
Well, probably just 2 years ago.
Oh, no way. I don't believe that. I don't believe it, Jesse.
No, like, as thinking about doing art more full time.
Okay.
I've always had a career in graphic design, but to do art and really realize I wanted to pursue more art making as really probably like with COVID, which sounds a little crazy, but realizing I wanted to do anything that dealt with art as a career was probably in my early 20s after I graduated with a environmental science and chemistry degree.
Did you?
Yeah, I know. I did. Yeah. And then I never I never really could figure out how you can use art and make money and make a career and sustain yourself. I kind of saw my dad have ups and downs with art career, and he lived in LA and then in Arizona, and kind of trying to make it as an artist and having some moderate success, but it seemed really difficult. So I was torn, as I think my mother probably was, if I wanted to pursue an art career, of like, how was I going to make it into a career?
Right.
So, and I loved environmental science things when I was younger and nature and stuff. So I kind of focused on that. When I went to UMass Amherst and got my degree, my bachelor's of science.
Okay.
And then never worked in that after I graduated.
Well, I'm curious because you had that background. And so, again, going back to that, the confluence of like both sides, right? So we have the science and we have the arts. How do you think, if any, it might be a stretch, but that has inspired your abstract art?
I think I like things orderly. I think actually like the kind of the balance of having that side of my brain, the sciencey type. It makes me a little bit of a different kind of artist in the way that like I'm organized. I can I'm really good with deadlines and getting things done and communication. I don't think I fit the mold of like the stereotypical artist personality, but it might be because it's balanced off with the other side of my brain a bit.
Okay. All right. So you have this academic background. You studied the sciences. At what point did you say, because you're still local? I mean, Amherst. That's still the Commonwealth. At what point did you say, I'm packing my bags and I'm heading to LA?
Well, after college, I had done a 3-month cross-country trip with some friends. And I grew up between Pittsfield and LA. My dad lived in LA when I was a kid, so that's kind of the connection to Los Angeles. So I would go out there in the summers to see he and my stepmom. So I took this trip after college, came back to Pittsfield, wondering what I was going to do with my environmental science diploma. And a friend of mine was moving out to LA. She got a job, and she was a little bit terrified to go by herself. And I said I would drive back out with her. Okay. And I was going to stay for 6 months, and I stayed for 8 years out there and went to art school.
Wow. Wow. So, okay, so many questions there. Many questions.
That was a lot of information.
Well, I'm so fascinated. One, the trip, cross-country trip. I've heard stories of people who do that. Is it as wonderful as it seems?
It is. I've actually driven across country 5 times. Wow. And 2 times by myself.
Really?
Yeah. That was not as fun, but
a lot of time to think.
It was more like, I'm going to move back home, or I'm going to move to someplace to London, so I'm going to drive back home. Yeah, it just kind of was out of necessity,
right?
But I did the 3-month trip was wonderful, and then I did one trip with the friend moving out to LA. That was a 2-week trip, and then one trip with my mom, when I moved from Los Angeles to New York, with my mother and 2 cats in a U-Haul. That was interesting. I highly recommend the cross-country trips. So.
Yeah, you know what? It's. I think you get a chance to see America. Yeah, right. We've driven to Florida, and when we drove to Florida, I was pregnant, and I swore never again.
Yeah, that doesn't.
It was horrible. It was horrible, and Florida is just flat and just long. So it wasn't pleasurable, but yeah, the cross country, that's something to think about for like the bucket list kind of thing.
It is, for sure.
Yeah. So, the scene in the New England scene, I'm sure, is so different from is it the LA scene? Were you in LA?
Yeah. Yes, right in Hollywood.
So do tell, what was that like?
At the point when I was there, which was my early 20s, I lived there throughout my 20s. LA's art scene was just kind of coming up. Okay. Maybe really wasn't even a thing. It was unusual when I spoke to someone in LA. They assume I worked in like film or TV, and at some points I did. Yeah. But when I went back to art school there, and people would wonder why I was out in LA. But now, I mean, gosh, that was probably 20 years ago now. And the art scene in LA is huge. Yeah. Now. But then it really was kind of just up and coming. Yeah. It was not as common as, entertainment and music.
Yeah, still had like a grit to it.
Yeah, and just kind of like a newness and trying to figure out. There was a ton of galleries. Obviously, we would go to open studios and the gallery walks, but it wasn't as prevalent. Yeah, it was kind of like New York was still known. For the art scene, but LA was much more movies and TV. Okay, so and I ended up going back to art school out there, and then working as a graphic designer at EMI Music.
Okay.
That was pretty
Yeah.
prevalent.
Did you find that it was because the scene was so kind of like new? Was it easier to make a name for yourself?
At that point, I really wasn't working in like art. I was more trying to get my graphic design career off the ground.
Okay.
So I was doing some little shows. I had small shows at cafes with a friend of mine who was a pretty successful painter out in LA. But yeah, that wasn't really my focus when I was living there.
Yeah, it was more about that graphic design. And would you say that at the core of like the graphic design is that art center, or do they consider you guys consider yourselves like artists, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it just happens to be on a computer.
Or
so
like different though,
corporate
right?
America.
Yeah, it's so different because it's like there's the art that you produce with your hands.
Yeah.
And you kind of are producing the art with your hand to the mouse, I suppose, or the whatever.
Exactly, the pen.
The pen. But so interesting. All right, so that's LA. And then Brooklyn comes into the mix at some point.
Yeah. But you know what? Wait, back to your previous question about when did I have an aha moment.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out when I was in LA what I was going to do because I knew I did not want to work in environmental science. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to do something with art. Yeah. And then I met a friend, and she said, well, why don't you try graphic design? I said, well, I can't really draw. Like, I'm not a realistic drawer at all. And she said, that has nothing to do with it. Just go and take a few classes. Oh. And if you have a creative spark and ability, this is a great way to kind of get into, like, as I was trying to think, use art as a career. Yeah. And I think that was my initial aha moment, not the 2 years ago. Yeah. That brought me into what ended up being my career in LA and New York.
So fascinating. I got to tell you a quick story. So my best friend and I, he ended up going to FIT, but I thought that I wanted to be a fashion designer, and we would have drawing contests. And his sketches always looked so professional. I called my drawings were like tomato head people because I'd always start.
That sounds good.
They always had like a dip in the middle, in the middle of their heads. It was so weird, and I had my aha moment when I realized I might like this, but this isn't my skill and my talent. Like, that was something that I knew that wasn't what I was going to do in life. So, yeah. So, yeah.
See, you have aha moments that go into both directions.
And it allows us, like the path that you went on. I mean, you had something at your core that allowed your ship to steer in the direction where it did to eventually allow you to land where you are today. But it took you on quite the journey. Yeah. So tell us about Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. I moved to Brooklyn, 2004.
Oh, nice.
I think. Yeah.
What part of Brooklyn?
I moved to Williamsburg.
Okay.
And then to Greenpoint.
Okay, yeah.
And then South Park Slope, so I guess I moved around a little bit. But I was there also for 8 years.
Yes.
And I had always wanted to live in New York.
Yes.
And I had this goal in my mind that I would live there before I turned 30. So I did turn 30 in Los Angeles, but my mother and I made that trek across country when I was 30, so I made it to New York before I turned 31.
Yes, yes.
And yeah, it was a whole different world in LA, completely different. And, but it was nice to be closer to home and be able to take the bus up at that time, which you can still take the bus.
Yeah.
And that was really my goal, was to kind of get closer to home, but not home.
Not home.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brooklyn is its own. So I lived in New York, so I'm from the Bronx. So,
oh, nice.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and I'm always fascinated that Brooklyn was a city. You knew that, right? Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Brooklyn was its own city.
That makes sense.
Yeah, like Brooklyn, they had their own city hall. Like, it was its own city, but then it was absorbed and made part of the boroughs. But
when?
That I don't know. You got to Google that.
Okay.
But it was its own city, and Brooklyn is huge.
It is.
It's huge. I remember the late 90s, and I'd go to Brooklyn because I actually had like my hairdresser was out there in Fort Greene.
Oh, okay.
But Fort Greene was like an artist colony. It was
cool.
Yeah, like you have BAM out there.
Yeah.
And it was just like Fort Greene back then. That was before like the rents just became sky high. Like artists were able to actually like live in Brooklyn, and it's tough.
Yeah, now I think it's easy, it's a little cheaper to live in some sections of Manhattan.
People are going to people are going to the Bronx, and they're trying to like give names to the Bronx like Sobro. It's like, stop. It's the South Bronx. Stop it. Stop it. Like, no.
I know. No. I'm not big on the names.
Oh my, it's like they're so crazy. But all right, so you had these. You came from the big pond of LA, and you forged a great career out there with your graphic design work. And in Brooklyn, tell me about your experience out here in that big pond.
At least I came to Brooklyn at least with some skills and some ability to get work and to know what the heck I was doing. So I landed actually at Clinique Cosmetics. I was their art director for about 6 years.
Amazing.
Yeah. I wasn't a big makeup person, but it just kind of weirdly fit, and I met a lot of great people through there.
How awesome is that?
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
And it was the offices were right on the corner of 5th and 56th right near Central Park. So it was really nice. And that was kind of, I kind of got into that through a friend who was an artist, but he was working there. Kind of the same thing as me, but he was a little bit more advanced. Like, he was an artist, but was doing graphic design as a career, and he got me in there. Thank goodness, because it led to just like meeting most of my friends who I still have, and just
oh my goodness,
a great community there.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And so I stayed there for 6 years.
Yeah. All right. So what did you love best about like living in New York City?
I love the fact that you can walk everywhere, and if you walk 1 hour, you can just experience so many different things, and see so many different things, and go through different neighborhoods that are completely different. So the ability to kind of like soak that all in.
Yes.
My mother, when I was a kid, had a saying. She didn't believe that people should ever say that they were bored.
Right.
She hated it when people said they were bored, and she said if you're bored and you're walking down the street, you just look up like 5 stories above, and your whole view of life will change. And when you're in New York, that completely is true. If you look up, you'll see something different. You'll see something going on. You'll just have a different experience that could definitely like change your outlook on what's happening.
Absolutely. I like to say that New York gives you like, it has this energy, and people always say, well, why does everyone walk fast in New York? Even when you sometimes may not have anywhere to go, but you're walking fast, and you always know New Yorkers versus non-New Yorkers because they're walking slow and they're looking around. You're like, gotta go, gotta keep it moving. But it's that feeling of you have to be on to the next thing. You're that energy, it fuels you.
Yeah.
And one of the things I loved about New York is that the ability to just meet people from all different backgrounds.
Right.
Yeah, it's like a classroom of just diversity every day.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. We just brought our son down there to go to the Natural History Museum this spring, and he was 6 at the time.
Yeah.
And when we left, we had walked around a bunch, and when we were getting back on the train, he said, Mom, I went to Italy and to China.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, yeah, you did, because he went to Chinatown in Little Italy.
That's right.
And he thought that was so cool, and he saw so many things, and just like the exposure was pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's the big thing about living in a city. That exposure, it stays with you.
Yeah.
And it's such an education. So kudos to you for exposing him to that.
Yeah,
world.
I mean,
that's big.
You got to get out of Pittsfield sometimes.
I hear you. And you know what? I mean, I think that that actually is a great segue.
Oh.
Because you got out of Pittsfield. You're living this Brooklyn life, right?
Yes.
Living it up in NYC. But then in 2012, you came back to Pittsfield.
I did.
So tell me about the adjusting to the arts and cultural terrain in Pittsfield after you have experienced this metropolitan atmosphere.
Yeah, and to say, though, I was back in Pittsfield all the time.
Okay.
Like, I would come for summers. I mean, my mom lived here.
Yeah.
My family lived here. So I wasn't like...
It wasn't like
I didn't
complete
cut
shock,
it off.
right? It's like, what is going on right now?
No, it's not like I hated it or anything.
Right.
I loved where I grew up.
Yes.
I did come back often Christmas and Thanksgiving. But yeah, in 2012, I moved home from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And yeah, I didn't know what I was going to experience. In like the 20 years I was away, I hadn't experienced that ever as a full-time adult living here. So I was extremely apprehensive, but it turned out really well, and I'm so excited. And now I don't think I would live anywhere else, much to my husband's chagrin. But I have no plans of leaving.
No, but Jesse, I think what you described, you had that ability to go away and to have these different experiences. And you returned, and your appreciation for Pittsfield is that much more because you've seen other things, but you also know what Pittsfield has.
Right, all the things that Pittsfield has. I think when you live here and you get stuck in kind of the same things that you do, you don't search out new things and experiencing new stuff. And
Right.
Pittsfield and all the surrounding areas offer so much. It's crazy.
It is crazy.
So, yeah.
I mean, I'm not a Pittsfielder. We moved here 12 years ago, and again, we had moved around a lot for our jobs. So we were in upstate New York in a place called Horseheads. We were there for 7 years, and I remember thinking and Googling Pittsfield and thinking, oh, what a charming place!
Right,
this place
because it is charming.
It's charming, and it offers the best of both worlds. If you want to still have that big city feel, you're close by, but it also the natural beauty is unmatched. Plus, you also have some, the area is it's booming with its art scene. There's so much here. Yeah. So I got to ask you, speaking of art scene, you had a showing that same year you returned, Out of the Rubble.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and
it sound awful.
It was at the former Bingo Gallery in what was the Notre Dame Church on Melville.
Right.
So tell me about Out of the Rubble. What was that about?
Out of the Rubble was kind of like picking yourself up from maybe things going wrong. Like not saying the move home was wrong when my mother was sick, so I did come home because of that. So it was like kind of like making like good things out of like a pile of what you might think is bad.
Yeah. What did it look like?
It was super like these positive like messages. It was a lot of words and colors, and the whole show was really vibrant. I guess maybe just to lift me out of where I was. It was needed. But, the Bingo Gallery was down in the basement of the Notre Dame Church. And I had a studio. When I first moved back, my first goal was to get a studio. So I had studio space there.
Okay.
Which was fantastic. And, the show, gosh, I can't believe that was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm curious with okay, folks, before I go any further, for those listeners just tuning in, my guest today is Jesse Tobin McCauley. She's a graphic designer, creative director, and abstract artist. And we're just talking about her return to Pittsfield, her full-time return to Pittsfield back in 2012, and her exhibit, her showing Out of the Rubble, which was at the former Bingo Gallery. Now, with your pieces and your showings, do you house them somewhere? Like, do people buy them? Like, where do they go?
Well, hopefully people buy them.
Oh, okay.
Normally, that's my ultimate goal.
Right.
After the shows, there's a lot still in my basement, I would say, or in my studio. But yes, I do sell a lot of work, and I do sell paintings on my website.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Yes.
they can be shipped anywhere. So, but yeah, or I paint over them if I just get sick of it and then create something new. Yeah. Things don't have to be permanent.
I know, but it just, but Jesse, but thinking about it, you paint over it?
I do. I mean, if I have it for a while and then I get sick of something. Yeah.
I almost think about that like a vintage Jesse, though. It's a vintage Jesse, and it's no longer.
But maybe it's one I never want to have around again.
Well, you know what? That is so interesting that you said that, because I wanted to ask you about just the mood connection and correlation to art. Art is so subjective. And you just mentioned painting over a work if the mood strikes you and you feel like the time is right. But how does your mood impact the way you approach your work?
Yeah, it's that's interesting that you asked that, because I was just telling a friend, usually I listen to podcasts when I'm creating work in my studio, which is at the Liechtenstein Center. And I realized I was listening to a lot of like murder podcasts and true crime.
True crime? Oh my gosh.
And then I was slow to move and do anything, and had like zero inspiration.
Yeah.
And I have to create at least 40 pieces for a new show coming up, and I was thinking, man, I'm really not going to get this done. So I had to I was like, this is because I'm listening to these super depressing stories.
Yeah.
So then I changed to, I don't know if you know the comedian Tig Notaro.
What? I don't know. No, I don't, but I'll look.
Oh, she's hysterical. She has a podcast called Don't Ask Tig. It's like a advice podcast. That's fantastic. So I started listening to her and Smartless, another podcast.
Okay, all right.
That are all comedian-based and funny. And that just now I'm kind of like in much better of a groove.
Yeah.
I feel like the color palette doesn't look so dreary, which to me, maybe if you saw it, you wouldn't think it was dreary. But like if I start using like any kind of gray or tan, things have probably run amok.
Because that was what was in your mind. First of all, you had been absorbing all this true crime.
And I do like the true crime, but I realized I should not ever listen to it while I'm at my studio.
Yeah, like that, like when I think about writing, I have to be in the right headspace. I need to, if it's a big project that I'm writing, I have to close my door. I actually have to get in a mood. Yeah. I have to be inspired. And I know it's almost like, I'm not an artist in that sense, but I look at words as the same way and how writing. Words comes together. And I feel that I have to, I wait for that little ting of inspiration. I know when it has arrived, and when it comes, you almost seize it.
Yeah. You have to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I can sometimes go into my studio in a very not a great mood, or kind of think, I only have this time to like create something, which doesn't lend itself well to like creating anything. So sometimes I'll just like scroll around Instagram and look at other artists I like. And then I'll pull out some paints and like make a little color palette and just kind of, clean up my studio to try to get myself into a better mood. And then I'll have like a half hour left and I'll do something.
Yeah, but it's almost like that mind prep that has to get you to that place when you do your work. Now, all right, so when you get into that right mood, do you name your projects before you start or after?
No, normally after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say normally after. When I have a show, like a solo show, I might kind of have a basic idea of what I'm thinking I want it to be called. Like I have a new one coming up, and I've named it in my head, and the paintings are all kind of based on that name. But that's pretty unusual. Like anytime I do a mural, or I've named it after.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me the story behind The Sun Will Rise.
That's a long story. Or actually, I don't even know how that started. I don't even know how I ended up. Yeah. That was like a COVID project. I had COVID. When COVID hit, I was laid off from my job as the director of creative at Main Street Hospitality, and we were all laid off. And I thought, okay, this is the perfect time to dive right into art more. I had my studio. I needed something. At least the studio got me out of my house because there was only one person in it. And but I also had an idea that like if projects came up, I would say yes to anything.
Right.
I wanted to kind of like flip what I was doing and just kind of make a new path.
Right.
So I've been asked by Bjorn at the Lantern to create a mural he needed to uplift his employees.
Yeah.
So the first, I was like, okay, I've never done a mural.
Yeah.
So I painted the entryway and the side of it.
Yeah.
And then based off of doing that, Jen Glockner had asked me if I wanted to paint a large-scale mural on the side. And I thought, man, that's a little bit intimidating because these other ones were like my height. I don't know, this was going to be huge.
Yeah.
So, but I said yes with the stipulation that I needed some people to help me.
Yeah.
And my uncle had painted a lot of murals in town back in the day, and he's an abstract painter. So my uncle Jay Tobin, along with Stephanie Quetty, helped me with that project, which was wonderful. But we had to, Jay and I had to do a lot of mock-ups for that to get approved. A lot of different concepts. I'd say we probably went through presenting at least 20 concepts.
20 concepts?
Yeah. And
wow.
Yeah, because I think it was just so new, and there was really no direction in the beginning for us.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like sometimes it's easier for people to see.
Yeah.
But it was very difficult to kind of get that going. But it was so great once everyone landed on what was going to happen.
Again, it goes back to the subjectivity of art.
Yeah.
When you know it. You know it, and you feel that emotional connection to it. Because I see the sun. Okay, so the sun will rise is on North Street, folks. So it's by the North Street Linden
corner. North Street, and above the 443 building.
Exactly. So when you see it, you're like, oh, I get it. It's vibrant, and your eyes are drawn upward.
Yeah, and
you know.
So we kind of landed on that. The mural was a combination of Artscape plus Milltown, and at that time Milltown had just bought Bosquet.
Okay.
And that mural is facing Bosquet, and Milltown loved the fact that it was a mountain. So for them, they had a connection to it. I wanted this idea. It was COVID. Everyone was down in the dumps.
Yeah.
And I thought, what can you rely on? The only single thing you could rely on was that the sun was going to rise every day. Hopefully you're going to have a better day. There was a lot of people coming up doing the drive from the hospital up North Street, and you see it right there. Like, it's very focal when you drive up. And I thought, well, that'll give, the people working, the people in there, a mood lifter, enhancer, hopefully, if they do come up that way. So that was, but that was a long road to get there. People have a hard time sometimes being okay with abstract art or needing to understand what it is. So this was kind of a good combo of something you could understand and you could name what it was, which I think if you can't, people get uncomfortable with it.
Well, I got to ask you, Jesse, as an artist, I'm sure you're super protective of your work, your ideas, and there's also a sense of vulnerability when you manifest your ideas onto paper or canvas or whatever, and you present it to someone, and it's rejected. And how do you manage that sting, even if you don't show it?
Luckily through my whole career I've dealt with rejection because graphic design's all about getting rejected.
Right.
Or just having ideas shot down or changed.
Yeah.
So I have a little bit of a thicker skin for it, but with my own artwork it's a little bit difficult, especially I think when other people may not understand what you're doing or have an art background because for abstract art, I think the worst thing that you could possibly do is try to figure out what it is. It's the best thing to just let it, not name it and just kind of let your emotions take over. Like, how does it make you feel? Like, why do you need to, put a name to it? I think it somewhat devalues it if you're trying to figure it out. Don't figure it out. Just what's your reaction? What's your initial feeling when you see it?
So that is the only...
don't worry about understanding it. People need to understand
Just connect with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it just to me, abstract art is just a feeling of happiness. I love it. I see colors, I see shapes.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is. I don't care if it makes up something. I can make up something in my head that it is for myself.
Yeah.
And that is the joy of it, too, kind of like what's your interpretation.
That's the beauty of art.
Yeah.
For sure. All right. So, yeah, that's it. It's that creative process, and then that actual, then sort of the rigmarole of actually getting something approved and seeing it to the end. So it's quite the process.
Yeah, that was a big process. I think because it was like one of the first bigger endeavors for a mural in the city.
Yeah.
So it was very new. That was September 2020, or that we did it, and then it was installed on my birthday on October 1st.
Aww.
And then they had the unveiling on the 2nd. And, it was just a whole brand new thing.
And you have paint boxes in this.
I do,
yes.
yeah.
All right, so which ones are yours?
Just one.
Just one.
I only submitted to it this year.
Okay,
I don't know why I didn't try to do it before. But the one I did this year is on the corner East and Elm, in front of Dr. Dallenbach's office.
Okay,
you know him, pediatrician, and it is called Candy because I think it reminds me of candy. That was named after I did the design.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice. So again, if you are traveling throughout the city, then, you have an opportunity to take in Jesse's work. She also is the creator of the Drive, Walk, Bike, Buy City Art Show, and it's now in its 3rd season. Did you envision that it would have this staying power?
No, I never envisioned it would be anything except for one time.
Okay, so for our listeners who may not know what this was about, I kind of know because I kind of remember when it first generated, but tell our listeners.
Well, I started it because, let's see, it was during COVID.
Yep.
Like most of these ideas I've had. Probably around April, May of 2020, a friend of mine sent me an article, and they were doing lawn art in Long Island. And I thought, hey, we could do that here in Pittsfield. This, you're just bringing your artwork out to your lawn, and then it's COVID. It was COVID safe. People would drive, walk, or bike by, and I figured people were inside their houses creating hopefully a ton of artwork or doing something during the lockdown and everything. Yeah. And they'd be up for sharing it with people, trying to sell some, trying to get some exposure, and just do something and create an event that could occur during COVID. So the first one was in July of 2020. It was postponed 3 times due to rain in July, which was kind of a little bit wacky. But I just kind of put it on by myself, and Jen Glockner was a huge person that helped me and a cheerleader for me doing it. And I really just created a super easy Facebook event and had people email me their address, and then you can join in.
Wow.
But really it was just intended to be that right then. That was it, that July. Yeah. Because there was the assumption that there'd be so much more happening the next summer. And then the next summer, it was still strange.
Yep.
So I had...
The description.
I had people ask me if I was going to do it. And then, and I hadn't intended to do it. But then they also had created the new Art Week Berkshire. And they said it would be great as an event during that, and that was in September 2021. So I did continue, and both the first year we had about 40 stops, so 40 different artists. The second last year we had probably about 45 people that signed up, and it's anything. It's it's. I had intended it to, in my mind, it was like painting and art only because that's what I do, but. It can be any kind of craft. You could have people in your driveway playing music. You could have dance. I believe the first year we had tap dance. Wait.
So people just come outside and tap dance?
Well, they can, right? You just put.
They just tap dance.
I can't remember if they ended up doing it or not.
What are they, tap dancing on demand?
I didn't see them because I was at my house. I don't really know what people are exactly doing.
I heard you're the tap dancers. Can you come out now?
Maybe they were doing it on like the hour. I don't know. It's up to everyone's whatever they want to do.
I hear you.
Like, I'm not policing them at all. And yeah, people kind of doing everything. Every kind of artwork, it's sculpture, pottery, and it was like any kind of fine art and artistic expression, really. Which is really up to you. My only stipulation and the only rule of the whole Drive, Walk, Bike, Buy art show is that you have to have a Pittsfield address.
Wow.
So I wanted it to be Pittsfield-centric because this is where I live. Yeah. I was trying to uplift my community. But you just need a Pittsfield address. That does not mean you need to live in Pittsfield. I have people who will host their lawn and lend out their lawn to artists who do not live in Pittsfield. And last summer, we probably had about maybe 10 artists who were hosted by someone else on a lawn.
Okay. Wow. So did this year's show, is it in progress now?
Yeah, it is. It will be Saturday, September 24th.
Okay.
From 2 to 6. And I just put out, last week, I just put out the call for art.
Okay.
And you just email me at drivewalkbikeart@gmail.com. You email me your address. I put you on a list, and then I send that list out to people. This year, I believe I'm going to have a brochure because that has been a complaint in the past. But I also got a grant from Pittsfield Cultural Council, so I can do a few extra things this year, which is great.
How awesome is this? That it like your idea from, at a time that was tough for all of us, right? And the fact that it's still here. And, I'm like excited for you, Jesse, because like some of these ideas that start in this place, like it'll blossom into something like huge. I mean, the fact that it's still going. Yeah. And once again, this year I didn't intend to do it. I just kind of figured, well, some people had said to me that they, maybe like one or two people, so it's not a lot, that they would love to be able, that they were artists who were participating, and instead of participating, they would just love to like go around and see all the artists. And I said, well, if everyone makes that decision, there's going to be no artists to see. So you have to please continue. And then, but then I had a bunch of people who had asked me about it to see if I was still doing it, some new people. And then I just realized that I had it described to me as just one of the most fun, joyous events that people have experienced. Yeah. Because there's like zero riding on this, I guess. It's just meant to be like a fun neighborhood event. You meet your neighbors, you talk to people, you can sell your work. All the money that goes back to the artist. I don't take any money. There's no registration fee. So there's nothing except you need to walk out your door and put your stuff on a table and then show it to people for like 4 hours. That is, I mean, I see the benefit to the artist, but also I see the benefit to the community. Yeah. Because we, as a community, sometimes it's we can be insular, right? We go in our homes, we lock our doors, and we're in there. And do we really know our neighbors? I mean, some people might. But like, engaging with our neighbors, having those, like back in the day, people would have like block parties, right? Yeah. You'd have block parties so you get a chance to meet your neighbors. The kids would play games. And it was that sort of like atmosphere. And I don't even know if people do block parties anymore. I don't know. This is like a citywide kind of block party for art. Yes, exactly. Yeah. I know it's just happened, and this is out of, like, I don't know why, but it's been concentrated somewhat in the southeast section of Pittsfield. Whenever anyone sends me an address, I'm always surprised. I live on Dawes in southeast Pittsfield, too. Yeah. But people are sending me their addresses. I don't know them, and then they just happen to live in the neighborhood. So it's gotten very concentrated in that area, and I would love for it to be other places, other neighborhoods. There you have it. So Jesse right now is saying this is for all of Pittsfield. It's for all of Pittsfield and for anyone. That's right. And if you want to, like, you have a friend who has a great lawn that people walk by, then you get like 2 or 3 friends and you put your stuff out there, or play some music, or do something. Okay. Yeah, really. I drop you off a lawn sign and hopefully a brochure this year, and then you can hand them out on that day of. And
It's very simple.
Super awesome. It's simple, and it's not a heavy lift, but I think the dividends are so many.
Yeah, I really have met a lot of people through it. A lot of my neighbors, a lot of other artists in the community. And just had great conversations with people, unexpected people that I didn't even realize created art. So, yeah.
It'll be interesting to see, like, if there are any, I don't know, like shows or different things that come out of this show.
True.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, if this, like, helps to launch careers, or maybe it's a, sort of it reignites or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it was also a thing, too. Some artists are kind of like, it's daunting to get a gallery show or know how to get one or who to contact. So there's a lot of people who participate in this that you don't see their work anywhere else. So it gives everybody a chance to show what they're doing.
Thank you, Jesse.
You're welcome.
And I know we've mentioned Jen Glockner's name a couple times. Jen is the director of the city's Office of Cultural Development, for those who may not know. And she also has a show here on WTBR.
And she helps me with a lot of my ideas.
All right. Well done, Jen. Well done. All right. So, Jesse, you're super busy. You're doing this. You also mentioned something before that you're currently working on some upcoming work. So you have some projects on the horizon. Anything that you can talk about?
I do. I have a solo show coming up in October and at His Daughter Paloma Gallery in Lenox.
Oh, okay.
So I think the opening will be over Columbus Day weekend, and it'll be all new work. And for me, different than my previous paintings, but kind of similar now to my mural style. So it's a whole new collection. And the gallery's awesome. It's right on Church Street. Please come. I don't really know when, but follow them on Facebook or Instagram, His Daughter Paloma, to keep up to date on when it'll be.
All right. So I just even thinking about this question, I'm like, but what do you like to do in your spare time, if that's even such a word?
Spare time.
You're like, what is that?
I don't know. Coming up with new ideas for the city. Plotting my rise to become the creative director of Pittsfield.
That's
a thing.
Put it out there. Put it out there.
Online.
Yes.
It's very different than the cultural development.
Yes.
It's all about having a look and style for Pittsfield and continuing it. But no, that was just a joke. No, it's not a joke. But that's not what I do in my
I'm all
spare
about
time.
like envision it, but I hear you. Yeah.
No, I'm obsessed with movies and TV. So we go to the movies a ton.
Ooh.
I'm in a mahjong league, which I love. Yeah, with a few women. We play every Thursday. And we've been doing that for years and years.
Really?
And that's super fun.
How'd you get into mahjong?
Through another friend of mine. I know, it's random.
Yeah.
But I love it. I love games.
Okay.
So yeah, I would say that's like spare time.
All right.
Know,
What's the last movie that you've recently seen?
Oh, the Minions.
Okay. So I saw it with my daughter too, and because I hadn't seen like the previous Minions, I totally was like, what am I doing here?
I might have fallen asleep a little bit. But the last movie I saw for me was Maverick, which I just loved.
Yes.
So that was fantastic.
Yes. I probably will see it again.
I would see that again.
It was great.
It was wonderful.
It was great.
Highly recommend.
It was great. All right. So I was thinking about this question because, you have so many different like titles and things that you're in, and if you're creative, but if you had to choose one genre out of all the things that you're involved in, and someone said you must pick, Jesse, you must only pick one, what would you pick?
What's
one
your
type
favorite?
of like what's your favorite?
I think doing the murals now.
Okay.
I mean, it's like super new, so maybe that's why it hasn't worn off. I do kind of like flit around to different things and get bored.
Okay.
Or just get like not bored, but I just want to do something different. And the murals are just such a wonderful way to like bring art to everybody.
Yeah.
You're out there painting them, and every time I start a project, I think, oh my God, this is never going to work out. Yeah. This looks horrible.
Do you really?
Oh, for sure. The first day, if I'm painting anything and you come in contact with me, and I'm like in a super bad mood normally. And just wondering, oh my God, I'm never going to get it done. Right. Oh my gosh, this is never going to work out. Right. The Welcome to Pittsfield mural had to be done in a week. So that was definitely like a, whoa, what's happening? What did I just sign up for? Right. So I think the murals, I'm actually teaching a camp because I don't need to be the only person in Pittsfield that paints murals. Right. And, Stephanie Quetty and Mike Cardy are doing fantastic things. They are awesome. Yes. So we need to kind of get more people into it. And I'm teaching a summer camp down at Berkshire Arts Center, formerly IS 183. For 11 to 14-year-olds to kind of get the next generation of mural artists. And specifically, we're going to be painting a mural inside the building. The end product is a mural throughout the hallways and the bathrooms there.
Really?
Yeah, so it'll be great.
That is so needed. I mean, we always think about that sense of continuity, right? Like, okay, we have our gifts, but how are we making sure that that next generation is equipped to sort of do its own thing, whatever that looks like? And so it's important that sharing of knowledge is important.
Yeah, the only way, I had no idea how to do a mural and how to approach it, I guess, because it's huge. A huge thing to wrap your head around, a large-scale painting. Yeah. And the only way I learned was through my Uncle Jay. He passed on all his information, and he was happy to do that, and how you do a grid and how you lay it out and how you kind of figure it all out, what kind of paints you need to have for different surfaces. It was invaluable information from him. Right. And now I think you hit the nail on the head, Jesse.
It's that having that knowledge, the transfer of that knowledge, because like you said, you started mentioning things that I'm like, oh wow, that all of that goes into a mural. Like I'm just thinking, you get there with your brush and you start and you're like, oh, this looks great, but there's like a legit process to this, and it's great to have the idea, it's great to have the talent, but there's also the talent matched with the know-how, and making it work.
Right, like I start every mural I do is drawn out on the computer and then measured out and measured by a certain foot. What foot's going to live in this? Like what color's going to live in there? Yeah.
Wow. So it's real technical.
It's all about a grid.
All about a
really good grid.
All right, Jesse. So we're down to almost the end of our interview, but I want to ask you this. One, who or what inspires you?
Who or what? Oh my goodness. I would say all of my family inspires me.
Okay.
Really, I have a lot of artists that I enjoy. Yeah. And artists that I now follow on Instagram. Okay. Anything colorful inspires me. Okay. Anything perfect. Like, I don't know, upbeat.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know. That was not a good answer.
No. And if people want to learn more about you, where should they go?
You can go to my website. It's jessetobinmccauley.com. Just my whole name. Or on Instagram, it's more of the Tobin, Moore of the Tobin.
That's right. All right. So you have the details. We've had such a wonderful conversation. Jesse, I just want to thank you so much.
This was great.
Yeah, you are super interesting. And you guys, you really need to see what she's wearing. I'm calling it a JTM original. Listen, I just gave her brand a name. I'm calling it a JTM original.
Oh, and you can find my hand-painted bags at Soma's Aromas.
Yeah.
They look like this dress that Roberta is referring to.
That's right. So if you want her, and she also has pouches there too.
I do. Yeah, I've got things around.
So check out her website. You won't be disappointed. And I just want to thank you again, Jesse, for a great conversation. All right, folks, you've been listening to Backstory. Let's hear it on WTBR-FM Pittsfield with Roberta McCulloch-Dews of the Mayor's Office in the city of Pittsfield. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.